Hi everyone. So this is a short video that's just going to show you the basics of how to, now that you know some terminology for the industry and looking at calls for submission, how to kind of read a call for submissions on a journal's webpage. As I said elsewhere, if you end up having questions about this, there is a forum where you can post those and I'll try to answer them. So I'm on the website for a journal called the Chattahoochee Review because they have fairly typical submission guidelines. So the place that you want to look is sometimes a journal will have at the sort of menu on their page a submit button. Sometimes they won't. So you don't see that here. So what I would tend to do is I would scroll over some of these and you'll see things are popping up. So if I scroll onto journal, I'll find the word submit. So I'm going to click on here and this is going to take me to the journal submission guidelines. I'm not going to read every word on here, but I'm going to hit some highlights. So the first thing is what you'll see is they're going to tell us how to submit. And to submit to this journal, you're going to utilize Submittable. There's going to be a video in a couple of weeks that really looks at exactly how Submittable works in a couple of different ways. So I'll save some of that for next time. What this is for is just to learn how to read these things. So what usually is going to happen is you'll see this big general block of area, which is their general guidelines, regardless of what it is that they're asking to publish. So there's a couple of things you want to take a look at here. So first, they're going to talk about rights. And then they're also going to talk about that these submissions should be previously unpublished. So you don't want to submit something you've had published elsewhere. They note that they do appreciate a short cover letter, and we're going to talk about cover letters in a later week. And then they do say that they will take simultaneous submissions, but that they want you to withdraw your work if it's accepted elsewhere. Fairly standard. And then there's some other details here that say don't mail submissions or email them. They won't read them, they'll return them unread. And then there's guidelines for what to do if you need to withdraw something from them. So you can take a look at what they say to do there. And so they've got some other stuff about that you should become familiar with their journal and how you can get a hold of those. And then this is an interesting little bit. Not every journal mentions this, but they talk a little bit about their process. So each submission receives 2 votes. Accepted work goes through a collaborative editorial process. And they say about how long it will take. So between 1 and 4 months. Pretty standard, and actually that's a little quick. So then the second part that you can find is you'll be able to see what each different kind of submission should look like depending on what you're submitting. So if you want to submit fiction or poetry or nonfiction or interviews or reviews and review essays or translations or visual art. And then they also have a note about payment. So you can see, depending on what it is that you're writing, what they'll take. So if you're trying to publish fiction, you kind of want to read what that they're interested in, but you definitely want to take a look at how long and how much you can send. So here they say submit 1 story of up to 6,000 words. So that means you don't want to send those multiple submissions because you only want to send 1 story at a time. Or, and you'll see this a lot, you can submit 3 shorts, or what people call flash fiction, of 500 to 1,000 words each. Their poetry guidelines are pretty broad. They publish excellent poetry of all types, including informal personal narratives, prose poems, and formal poems, and they say you can submit up to 5 poems. So when you're submitting poetry, it's good to see how many poems a journal is willing to accept. And then again, nonfiction is going to look very similar to fiction, so you can read about their requirements, what kinds of nonfiction they published, and again, very similar to the fiction, submit 1 essay of up to 6,000 words, or submit up to 3 shorter essays each. And then there's other information of these kinds for if you want to try to get an interview, a review, or a translation published. So, one thing I will say is you should take these word counts very, very seriously. I would never submit an essay or a short story to the Chattahoochee Review that's even 6,002 words long or 6,001 words long. Take those guidelines very seriously because they'll just reject them if you don't follow them. And so then the last thing I'll show you, one last thing before we go to the submittable page, which I will take a quick look at, is you receive 2 copies as payment. Not every journal can pay, and so you're going to see that frequently, so that's not very unusual. Okay, so like I said, there's going to be more stuff about Submittable later, but I'm going to click on this just so you can kind of see what it looks like. Signing up for Submittable is 100% free, so it's actually something that once we get to the guidelines for how to do that, you may want to go ahead and do. You'll notice that the guidelines are very, very similar here. They all look almost exactly the same. And so it's worth just knowing that you can usually, if you can't find that submissions page on a journal's website, if they say submit on Submittable, click on that link and they'll usually have guidelines there. And then you can scroll all the way down and it'll tell you, you can click on here and see what it says. Again, usually the same thing over and over again. And then we'll get to a video where you'll click on submit and be able to see how that process actually works. Okay, so this is just a quick and brief guide to what to look for on a website for a magazine to read their submission guidelines. Now that you have that industry terms, you could see them on the page. Again, if you have questions, there's a form. Please feel free to ask. And good luck and happy submitting.